The business world is full of advice about finding your ideal client. You've heard it before. Identify that COO at a mid-sized retail brand in your target region. But what about the flip side? Many consultants and business owners, they don't spend enough time considering who they should actively avoid. So here's my take on the types of clients that can drain your energy, your resources, and ultimately really harm your business. And I'll give you a little hint. If you recognize yourself in any part of this list, it might actually be holding back your growth. Okay, so let's get into it. And these are the 10 client types that I would say beware. The first is what I called respect deficient. So these are clients that they don't value your time. They frequently cancel meetings. They expect immediate responses at all hours of the day. And generally, they act as if your business exists solely to serve them. Avoid them. The next is what I call the decision avoiders. So these are people that they can't commit. They require, excessive iterations and approvals. Every project kind of feels like it becomes this endless loop of, let me think about it. And can we see just one more option? These people, right, will slow things down. They will drag their feet. They're not the kind of clients that you want. Let's look at the third, action avoiders. And these are they're similar to the above, but they're a little bit different. They enthusiastically commit to projects. They tell you that it's a top priority for them. But then, and here's the kicker, right? Then they consistently fail to follow through on even basic agreed upon tasks. They might respond to check-ins with endless excuses. I was sick, my kids were sick, in-laws came into town. And I'm not saying that those are not valid reasons, but when they keep coming up over and over again, or when they say things like, I've just been so busy. Listen, we're all busy. We all have 24 hours in a day. Many of us have young kids or elderly parents or fill in the blank. There's always something. Yet you can still find people who are extremely successful while being extremely busy. And you can find people who are extremely busy, quote unquote, extremely busy, yet they're not successful. So what really separates the two? This is why you want to pay attention to what I call these action avoiders, that they'll tell you that it's a priority for them, but ultimately they really don't take much action. And that's a problem in the consulting world, because if you're working with a client and they're not willing to take action, they're not willing to implement the recommendations that you've discussed with them, or implement whatever has come up as necessary to solve the problem they have or to achieve the result that they want. You can be the best in the world at what you do, but it's not going to see the light of day, right? It's not going to turn into reality. It's not going to change the situation. And so not only will that client end up feeling bad about the experience, they're not going to generate or send referrals your way because they didn't get great results. It's hard then for you to create any kind of case study or testimonial about that because there's not much to talk about. And so it actually, even though you may have gotten paid, or hopefully you did get paid for that work, it doesn't really amplify. There's no real leverage inside of that in terms of the additional benefits that can come from a happy client or additional referrals or case studies. Let's take a look at another type of client, what I call the communication ghosters. So these are the people that disappear, during critical projects. You've let them know that you're going to need their response by a certain date or time. Hopefully you even told them in advance, hey, like in a week from now on Friday, we need to get all this information at the latest by that point. And then they just kind of disappear, right? They get busy, things happen. And I'm not saying that there are bad people necessarily. Most of this is not necessarily about an individual personal situation or somebody being bad, but we're talking about clients. We're talking about business here. And of course, people make up your clients, and this is all connected, but you want to really pay attention to the cues or the signs of, is this person good at communication? Do they respond quickly to emails, or do you have to send multiple emails? Do you feel like you're chasing them on a regular basis? What I've found over the 20 plus years now of building and running consulting businesses and working with thousands of consultants all around the world in many different industries is that when you start to see signs of something, right? Somebody's not communicating, somebody's not taking action, like everything I'm going through here with you right now, it usually does not improve. And doesn't mean that it won't improve, or there's no chance that it will improve, but it's unlikely, right? There's habits that people have. If somebody is late to a call, that generally shows that they're going to be late to the next call. Not always, but again, this is the kind of the habits that people have, the routines that they set. This is why you'll consistently see people who are very responsive in emails. They'll continue to be responsive in emails. People who show up on time or even early for meetings will continue to show up on time and be there for meetings. People who actually do what they say they're going to do will continue to do what they say they're going to do. If you don't pay attention to these things, they typically come back to bite you. Right? They typically impact your business negatively. Let's look at the next one. Perpetual hagglers, right? These are people that they think like they're in some kind of bazaar where, it's normal to just negotiate on everything. Listen, I've spent time traveling the world, living in different places where culturally there's elements of negotiation. That's fine, right? I respect that. I get that. But when you have people that are always pushing for discounts, or when they treat your expertise like a commodity, solely focusing on price rather than value, they're showing you exactly how they view your relationship. And so these are people that you want to generally stay away from, because if you see that in your initial communications and during the sales process, there's a very good chance that that will continue on during your engagement, where there's always little things, they're always nitpicking, they're never happy. So keep that in mind. Let's talk now about the next. Scope creepers. They regularly add requirements without acknowledging the need for additional compensation. Could you just, add this small little thing here? Or I just thought of one more thing if you could take care of this. Now, the challenge for the average consultant is that you care about your clients a lot. You want the best for them. And you feel bad to say no to requests like that. The problem, however, is that when you do that once, you're actually training your client to feel that it's okay for them to continue to ask you for little things. And it initially feels small to them and it feels small to you. But one turns into two, turns into three, turns into four. And all of a sudden, you've trained your client to think that it's completely normal and okay for them to add on additional stuff, right? It's like, death by 1,000 paper cuts. Your profitability starts to tank. You start to find that you're in a position where the scope that you initially agreed on has now ballooned. And the longer that you wait to rein it back in, the harder it becomes to do so. Beware of scope creepers. The next is what I call financially unstable. That doesn't really need much explanation. But when you work with a client who from day one is talking about cash flow issues, when they are reluctant to, even discuss their budget up front with you, that should signal, an alarm bell. That should get you paying attention, because it likely means that there will be additional issues going forward. And what I've seen with many consultants that we worked with over the years, and I'll tell you, I certainly experienced myself in my early days of consulting, was that if you have a client that is financially unstable, what ends up happening is you will invoice and you won't get paid. Now, if you've done it the right way, ideally, you've invoiced before you're doing the work and you're collecting payment before you do the work that is included in that payment. But that doesn't always happen. So you send an invoice, you don't get paid, you do the work, or you've done the work, you send an invoice and you don't get paid. Now, these financially unstable clients, oftentimes they're not paying you because they're bad, or I should say, they are not paying you because they are bad people. They are not paying you because they haven't managed their finances well and they're in a challenging position. Of course, you'll run into some people who are bad people and they will take advantage of anyone that they can. Hopefully, you're not working with someone like that. But if somebody is financially unstable, if somebody is not willing to discuss and talk about some of their financials that are relevant to the work that you're doing, that is key, then you generally want to pay attention to that, because it's a sign that you might end up spending a lot of time doing great work and then having to spend a lot more time trying to collect for the work that you've done. And that's not really a place where you want to be. Let's talk about the next. Serial complainers. These are people that they just never seem satisfied. I know some people have friends like this. I'm sure I've had friends like this too, but I probably have left them or kind of pushed them away gently over the years, because I just personally don't like people that complain. I think life is too short to complain. And I think there's too many good things that we can focus on. And so when you choose to focus on something negative, you're making an active choice. And I empathize with people who have a lot of negativity in their lives or a lot of challenges in their lives, in whatever, if that's health or financial issues or just all kinds of stuff. I empathize with that. But for the vast majority of the people that are watching this, listening to this, the people that we interact with, they have a clear choice. The same way I have a clear choice every single day. Do I focus on the things that are positive, or do I focus on things that are negative? I can choose right now to find something that is negative, but that means I'm filling my mind. I've made an active and deliberate choice to focus on a negative thing instead of a positive thing, because there's always positives. So with clients as well, if you start noticing, and this is even before they become a client, if you're talking to a buyer, you're going through the sales process, and if you're noticing that this person is always complaining about everything around them, this person was terrible, we had this, we hired this company and they were idiots. Like, if you're seeing that, and if that person is taking absolutely no responsibility for anything around them, that's a really strong indication that they will do that with you as well. So keep that in mind, that again, habits, patterns, when you start to spot these things, you'll be able, in my opinion, in my experience, I would say, and my observation that I would respectfully offer to you is there's always patterns. And when you start to look for these things, you will be able to make significantly better decisions. Okay, let's go over two more. Process disruptors. So these are the people that refuse to follow your methodology. You've laid out, here are the steps we need to go through, and they're going to try and circumvent that, or they're going to say, hey, can we just change this? Can we do that first? And some consultants will get derailed by that because they don't want to upset the client. And that's a mistake. If you believe that by trying to ensure that your client goes through your process, or if you believe that saying no to your client is a bad thing, you actually are not respecting your client, and you're not respecting yourself or your business, or if you have a team, then your team. Because there's a reason that you have a process. You have a process, you have a methodology, you have an approach, because you know it works. And so if you let the client derail you and the project from what you know that works, it means that they are likely going to receive an inferior product or outcome. There's a whole bunch of ripple effects on that. The client will not get what they should be getting, right? They're not going to receive the full value outcome or result. That means that they're less likely to refer more business to you. They're less likely to buy more from you. Your case study or testimonial won't be as good as it could have been. There's so many aspects and things that are connected to this that you should always keep the process intact. I'm not saying that if you find, a better approach, or something happens during the project that tells you or makes sense, when you're talking to your client, if it makes sense to adjust things, then adjust things. But don't allow a client to take you off of the path that delivers the result that they want, because that's actually why they hired you. They didn't hire you just to boss you around and to fill, their calendar and your calendar with things that they control. They already have a whole bunch of employees for that if they want that. Right? They hired you to solve a problem or to create a specific outcome and result. And in order for you to deliver that at the highest level possible, your expertise, your process needs to remain intact. The final one I'll talk about, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but it's payment delayers. People that have a history of late payments, or if they require extensive follow-ups for invoices, they will continue doing this. Your expertise deserves prompt compensation. There's no excuses for that. The same way that I would hope that when you receive an invoice, you pay it. Or if you're using a company's services or whatever it is, and your credit card bounces, it doesn't go through, my hope would be that you would be the kind of person to make sure that you solve that right away. Why? Because it shows respect to the person that you're working with or the company that you're working with. And the same way that you would want the people that you work with to pay you right away, you should also make sure that you pay right away. I mean, I remember learning this kind of mindset, I guess you could call it. It's called the mirror. And essentially what it says, or the way that I remember learning about this, is that you need to do and be what you want to see in the world, all right, and in the marketplace. Meaning that if you want clients to pay you high fees, then you need to be willing to invest a lot of money yourself into services or coaching or programs or your own education. If you want clients to be able to make decisions and not drag out the sales process and take a long time, then you need to do that as well. And I think this comes from, at least my kind of observation and belief, is that you will show up much more confident and you will have clear expectations around how things are done, because that's how you do things. But let's just take the example of maybe you take a long time to make decisions. You hesitate to invest in yourself, your business, whatever it is. And then you're working with a client. It's hard for you to show up confident and to talk about your policy or your process of how things should be done, because you don't do that yourself. But it's amazing that when you start doing that yourself, and you start showing up and actually mirroring and living the way that you want, you will exude that same kind of energy. And I'm not talking like woo energy. I'm just talking what actually starts to happen, right? When you start doing things, you're creating a habit, and that starts to carry over to other people around you and in your conversations and the signals that you send. It all connects. So I hope, again, that as I've gone through each of these different types of clients to beware of and to avoid, that number one, you can use this as a way to filter through who you're talking to, the buyers, the clients, so that you can be aware of it, but you can also course correct, adjust, hopefully avoid taking on these kinds of clients. But the other part of it is for you to look at yourself and go through each of these and think about, how do I show up in each of these areas? Am I this type of client that I myself would want to avoid? And my suggestion that I would respectfully encourage you to consider is, if you adjust that in your own life, you're likely to start seeing that it fixes it for you and for your business as well. Meaning that if you're slow to take action right now or slow to make decisions, change that. Because if you know that's what you want to see, if you want the buyers around you to start making decisions faster, to take more action on your recommendations, then you yourself start doing that, you'll start seeing that the people around you, now that becomes the way that you do things, they'll also start doing that. So I hope this has been helpful for you. If there's another client type that you have avoided or that you believe should be on this list, let me know. Put it in the comments section below, or reach out if you have other suggestions for topics that you'd like me to talk about in an upcoming video. But I hope that you found this helpful.